Farewell, My King, the Cult of Me podcast is all about John 3:30. He must become greater, I must become less. We have to kill our own kingship to truly understand our relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And that's what we're all about.
Thank you for joining us on Farewell, My King. You have Wade J. Carey, the Beethoven of book writing. Salute. And the marvelous third string theologian, Ray Newmans. I am so absolutely happy that you decided to watch us today. Today is good news, good news, good news. We're going to be going over something that everyone deals with. Everyone has either dealt with it in their life, they're dealing with it right now, or they're about to deal with it. And that's the big A word. And it's not a Philly word. It's anxiety. Well, Wade has written a book, Walks with Wally. You've heard us talk about it. Everyone's excited about this book. It is absolutely a phenomenal book to walk with Wade and his very anxious, early on anxious rescue dog and talk about 21 days, just 21 days of light, good reading on how to tackle the enemy of anxiety. So thank you for showing up. This is the Farewell, My King podcast. Of course, how do you get more? You go to the YouTube machine, type in Farewell, My King, and hit enter. And then we'll come up. We have a lot of information. We actually have a lot of videos up. But all Wade's books we've done some overviews on them, and we've gotten some really interesting conversations and topics. So please check us out there. Wade also has a Facebook page for his books, his author page. It's search on Facebook, Wade J. Carey, author. We do have a Gmail account if you'd like to email us or send applications to host the show so we can finally fire the third string theologian. And that is farewellmyking@gmail.com. And yes, I'm going to read your application tonight. Okay, so Wade, there is something that has happened here I believe, let me see, Nanu, December 2nd, something happened. Walks with Wally was entered into, man, what was it? What exactly happened with this Walks with Wally book?
Well, I typically will enter my books into the Writer's Digest National Book Writing Contest just to see. I don't, since I'm writing inspirational and overtly Christian material, I don't always expect to win, although you never know. But it's good to get a judge's commentary because this isn't a book review. This is a publishing industry judge. And it's interesting because if I could get to someone who is either a Christian or at least open to it or not hostile to it, the books usually get a fair review. And it's always interesting to see what somebody thinks because that's why I write the books. I'm not trying to be the next Hemingway or anything like that, but it's just simply what can I offer based on where I think God is leading me in my biblical studies? What encouragement can be found? And so a little over a year ago, I encountered anxiety in a very unexpected way and didn't really know. And that's the thing about it is anxiety and depression, they're like two sides of the same coin. And when I start talking about it, it's amazing, Ray, because people just kind of stop and start listening because most of us have dealt with it in some way, shape, or form, either one or the other. In talking with a professional Christian counselor, have come to find out that I score very low on depression. I don't struggle with it, but anxiety was through the roof, and only through constantly trying to chip away at understanding it and dealing with it, not mastering it, but just fighting through it is the key. And that's why I think that what was submitted back from the judge in the contest is so valuable for people being able to find something that they can either check out for themselves or somebody they know to find encouragement, because we don't typically, when we're trying to solve something, I mean, it's nice when you can have a quick drive through, but this is not a very long book. It's very concise, but it's right to the point and it offers enormous encouragement. And my theme for this year is simply don't send somebody a gift card that it's just going to end up disappearing. Send them the gift of encouragement. We have so many in the books, and in particular, this anxiety book is something that can offer somebody some relief and some recognition of the things that we all battle every single day.
Awesome. Well, disclaimer, me and Wade have dogs. We do not have a studio, even though I've tried to make mine look a little crazy, and Wade got all his sports stuff in the background. We do this out of our homes, in our closets, pretty much. So this is real life. You might hear an animal start screaming here in a minute, or you might hear one of us start screaming, but I'll be sure to mute us. But Wade, I want to highlight one thing here, because you said two words. So you said anxiety and depression. So myself have had extensive counseling through the VA and through a Christian counselor and a group of men that I submitted myself to be counseled with. There is a difference in these two. And I want to lay down the foundation before Wade gets into some of the parts of the book. And what the feedback we got from this book from the judges is that depression is being stuck in the past, is you're held up and held in and compressed by the past, what has happened in the past. Anxiety is a different beast, meaning you are worried about the future. And I'm not saying that someone with depression can't have some of these futuristic worries, but when you start separating these two, and Wade scored on what the DSM-5 would consider a test that, all counselors give a test. And if you haven't done one, I'd say go to a professional to get one, not the one online, because they can be skewed to get you to start trying to do something that might not be beneficial for you. But anxiety is either worried about the future, trying to control the future, or thinking that you're not equipped for that future. While depression talks about everything that's happened to you in the past. That is basics of the trauma of the past.
Yes.
And some of this is not trauma. That word gets thrown around a lot. Trauma gets thrown around. Some of it is just life is really crappy sometimes.
It is.
Like, there is nothing in the Bible. Me and Wade searched it to say that there was going to be a beautiful life here. Heaven's going to be right now. And that's not true. So we will have difficulties. We will have marriage issues, couple issues, health issues, financial issues,
Children issues,
everything. We're going to have these issues, and that does leave a scar. Now, and I'm not taking away from the huge population that hopefully is listening to this, that there is such a thing as high trauma events that have happened in your life: war, abuse, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. These need to be dealt with head on, and they need to be dealt with proper professionals. And our take here at Farewell My King is that you find a Christian counselor. If you're not a Christian, well, we can help you in getting through them steps, because the Bible is the cure for you to understand the reason why you have depression and deal with it, and to deal with your anxiety. Now, speaking on the anxiety, because that's what this book is about. Primarily Walks with Wally is an anxious dog with an anxious handler called Wade Carey, walking through their life, not realizing that some of the things that they were worried about didn't exist. Anxiety folks usually like to think up the worst case scenario and really hyper vigilance, and something bad's going to happen. Hey, look, I found a quarter, so that means I'm going to get in a car wreck. So these unrealistic sways back and forth of what reality is. And all this is distorting, and all of it is a symptom of the sin nature. Every single human being will deal with bouts of depression or anxiety or something like it throughout their life. But some people are pre-wired to have harder times with one, both, or maybe some other extremely difficult brain issue that would cause deficiencies. So I've set the stage. We're going to be talking on one side of the fence. Hopefully me and Wade can come back and talk about the depression side one day, but we want to focus on the book and what the book talks about. And the book talks about the anxiety. How many of us is worried about the future? It's hard not to worry about the future. I mean, you can't get on Facebook and not see someone predicting the end times and Jesus is coming back, or there's going to be a financial collapse and everything's horrible. This is all part of the growing pains of us living in this life. And Wade has taken these very heavy, difficult, distorted topics and put them into bite-sized pieces, palatable pieces, in a very smooth 21-day experience for you to identify, adopt new principles, and begin to heal yourself. So, Wade, I'm going to slide this back over to you because I could talk for days about this book. I mean, and it's funny how we see that anxiety angle coming from a rescue dog. Because Grayson was also a rescue dog, and he had tremendous anxiety. He couldn't walk upstairs. He couldn't do this. He would snap at you around food. But over time, these anxieties became eliminated because the threat of what he was worried about was dissipated. So first, Wade, playing the quarterback here, the first pass I throw is a small slant. Okay, you just got to run a small route here. What did these people say? So it was a Writer's Digest self-published book contest. Okay, and they gave you some feedback on this book. Can you share that feedback with us?
Well, essentially, it appears that the approach worked, and the commentary was appreciating the sufferer's perspective, and that's what I think is so interesting about this. Is I had been planning on doing a daily devotional, with Wally because he's we found him crippled with anxiety, and he was a rescue and that kind of thing. What I didn't realize is that God was sliding an animal in front of me to take care of that was going to expose my own anxiety. And I didn't really know my anxiety until I had been getting, some blood work to check my blood counts and whatnot last fall. And they wanted to do as a standard a bone marrow biopsy. And I mistakenly opted for the in-office or outpatient. And once they were in and everything was going fine, then they told me they didn't get what they needed. I was going to have to go to the hospital. I had an involuntary, and this is important. It was involuntary panic attack or something of the sort where my blood pressure dropped. I mean, I thought I was going to pass out. If I was going to die, I didn't know what it was. Fortunately, my wife Alyssa was there, and she came around, and so I got to ultimately go over to the emergency room, and blood counts had stabilized. But I mean, my whole body had clutched up. It was, I didn't really know what it was, but it was part of God showing me what I was dealing with. And that's really what I want the people who are listening or watching this to understand is that the enemy is always trying to attack us, and it's best when it's covert, when we don't really know what's going on. And for decades, I come from a working class background and have worked and don't have a big financial backup or anything like that. And so I'm always fighting. As you know, Ray, I wrote a book about budgeting, which is about surviving and not how to budget, but why and why it's so important. So the compilation of all of these events and normal, things that happen in your life that are of a negative nature have happened. So the compilation of all that ended up with me with that panic attack. And so I started changing things in my life. Chief among that was all of a sudden I had this daily devotional and it, bring in the anxiety part of it. And I knew God was talking to me. So I published it earlier in 2025. And it's been well received because it's, I wouldn't call it an antidote, but it provides some medicine and some healing. And a lot of times I was really just preaching to myself about these things. We need to counter all of the obstacles and tribulations that we run into in life with things from the Bible. We need some medicine from God because human psychology is great, but it can only go so far. And certainly anxiety, depression, you want to consult a professional, but there's another professional, your soul is your personality and your mind and your experiences, but your spirit being the image of God, well, he's providing medicine too. And I'm not a either or, I'm a both and guy. So here you go. We got to take care of our psychology, but we also got to take care of our spirit because the troubles that we go through, we have to see hope. There has to be some glimmer of hope as we're going through these things. And if there's not, life without hope is terrible. I mean, it's dark and it's bleak. So that's what I'm hoping that the readers will come upon is there is hope. There is more to this than just attacking your psychology. Certainly there's more to it than just coming up with the Bible because we're people too. We're human beings made in the image of God. So we need to come at it from all angles. And what I hope to accomplish in it is just give people a short, concise way that they can take a look at the whole subject to raise up above and look down upon it and to just understand that it is part of spiritual warfare, that it is an attack. And sometimes those attacks comes through decades, not just, gigantic super events that are hurtful and bothersome. Sometimes they just sneak up. And that's what happened with the panic attack. And in the aftermath, my fight back against all of that happened, and understanding anxiety and trying to learn it, because I'm a sojourner. I'm learning it as I go. Certainly not an expert, but that's what the whole thing is a lot of times anxiety sneaks up on you, and all of a sudden it just comes at you hard. So the more you can proact, the better, because nobody wants to go through anything panic or anything like that. Sometimes maybe there's a slingshot into depression, but we all have to tend to not just our mind, but our spirit as well, because we are made in God's image.
Okay, people. That's the overview of this book. This is the meat and potatoes of what is Wally and how we deconstruct this. This is not a name it, claim it. This is not pay to get it fixed. This is a way to allow and ask the Holy Spirit to come in and to begin to heal what's wrong with you. And one of the biggest things that is wrong with us is our separation from the Creator, from Jesus. And the more we reduce that separation, the better we are equipped to deal with this situation called this earth, in this climate, in this culture, and this society that we live in. And don't get it mistaken. This is not the first time there's been trouble in the world. You can read the Old Testament and just, I believe that's why it was given to us, so we can. It's a shadow of what is to come. I'm really glad we're not under the control of the Romans anymore, because that's really not the greatest thing. And honestly, I'm glad that our religious system, our Christianity and Jesus and following Him, is not controlled by the Sanhedrin, in the Levitical
Or the
priests
pagans.
or the pagans. So there has been much improvement in. And he has, meaning Jesus, has been extremely faithful in telling us what is next. And the people, myself, Wade, that deal with anxiety, we get extremely worried about what's next. Even though we might know the truth, sometimes our heart tells us lies. And this is the best separation that we can get to start showing us through this book of that the Bible does speak. I mean, the Bible says 365 times, do not be afraid. That doesn't say that worry will not be there, but it does say that we are not to be afraid of what's next, no matter how dim or how bright that future could be, because I know everyone's dealing with different things. There could be someone right now that is dealing with cancer, that has lost a child, that has lost their banking account. It's zeros or negatives. These things are real, and they're there to sift you. This is part of Satan sifting you and creating environments that is so difficult that you don't look up, you look in the mirror instead. So wait, I spoke about this Writer's Digest feedback. Could you go through the feedback for us, since we have the overview of the book and the reason why it came about? What did they say when this book was submitted and the judges were finished?
Well, essentially, the judges liked the layout, and I think that's what anyone who reads a book they're going to be able to read the short chapters and walk through. Essentially, it's a fast. It's a fast from anxiety. So as you walk through it, we need to counteract everything that comes at us that causes the anxiety. And it takes an eternal perspective. It takes a biblical perspective, but it also later, after the 21-day fast from anxiety, starts addressing some of the macro issues that drive it. For example, we've done many podcasts about the political matrix and how Satan uses that to pit people against each other. And anyone who's watching or listening, they can go back and look through and find our commentary on that, because it's apolitical. It's more about spiritual warfare and how the enemy will pit us against each other, how exactly the mechanics of that work as it relates to the very nature of God. So, going through some of the things after the fast, attacking that, looking at why we do harmful things to ourselves in this modern society. For example, there's a lot of things that are addictions. There's a lot of unhealthy things that we do to ourselves. And we should all understand that, well, if you want to condemn someone who smokes, well, what about someone who overeats or someone who is addicted to drugs or an alcohol? I mean, all of these things, these are things that can pull us and give us a false temporary comfort. But a lot of it is driven by the worry that we have because it is hard to pursue the American dream in this society that is rigged against us. And so, going through that, and I think that most of the judge's commentary had to do with the 21 days, but it looks like it works, but it also sets up for you to go from the micro to the macro to understand and get a full, complete picture of from where I'm sitting of how I see the enemy uses anxiety against us. And I would say the keynote is one of the chapters in the 21 days is something, an expression I heard from you. It's called shadowboxing with ghosts. And so if I can just explain that, it's very simple. Most of the things that I battle that have provided anxiety is, you go through things that are traumatic. And after a while, you, as a self-defense mechanism, you start stepping ahead. And if you're not careful, you start fighting battles that just don't exist. And so, as you pointed out, anxiety is usually about something from the future. I would get something in my mind and I'd go down, I'd try to find a way to fight this battle of something that might happen that almost never happens. And I start fighting it ahead of time. And all of a sudden my anxiety's going. And then all of a sudden I have the real things to be anxious about, the normal problems. And that's how I ended up in this panic attack situation, having no idea what was going on, just completely oblivious because like something bad happens, just keep going. Something good happens, yay, that's great, but just constantly trying to, it's like trying to run this race out in front of this monster behind me. And then all of a sudden I stop and I turn around and I see there's not a monster behind me. There's not one back there. I made it all up in my mind. And that's how the enemy is so tricky and coming at us with the anxiety part. So the shadow boxing with ghosts was just a beautiful depiction of what it's like is I'm fighting against things that don't really exist. And I think that's pretty common. I'm not claiming, again, I'm not a clinician. I'm not claiming anything like that. I'm just saying, hey, this is what I saw when I'm dealing with it. And a lot of other people seem to connect with it. So I do hope it provides hope, but recognition of what's going on, I would say is maybe even 90% of it.
I agree. And in my counseling, and me and Wade has discussed this too, the difference between bears and dragons.
Nah.
The bears are the day-to-day things, the flat tire, late for work, you overspent by $200. That's the bears. That, what do you do with a bear? You either spray it with spray, you make separation, but you got to keep going. But there is dragons in our life. There is the cancer. Half my family was just killed in a car accident. There is these dragons that come with 7 heads and 7 wings, and they just throw down flame and fury on your life and your family. And knowing the difference between these, because someone who is dealing with anxiety, and I'm speaking from experience, not as a clinician, is that you take so much for so long, then hey, a jacket falls off a hanger and you lose your ever loving mind over it. You become unwilling to deal with anything else. So if you find yourself where you're sparking off on anything too fast, it might be because you are fighting a dragon, but it's really a bear. It's really something you just need to hit the spray and get them away from you and deal with it, go around it and keep moving. And it's not something that's going to this is not ankle, this is not you getting handcuffs put on your legs and being thrown overboard by some Italian mafia. This is just an everyday occurrence.
Well, Ray, let me just insert something there. I think that's an excellent point. And when all this started going down was 20 in the fall. I can remember when I could recognize as I look back, a retrospective, when it started, it was My wife and I was able to bring her on a business trip up to New England, and we spent a week up there. I called on clients and we drove around. We had a great time. And we were driving from somewhere in Boston to get to Logan Airport to return home. And it was terrible traffic. And I remember we missed going to the airport. And instead of heading, to the airport, all of a sudden we're down near Faneuil Hall. And I was losing my mind. And there was no reason to. It was just simply, okay, well, we missed the exit. We still got time. I wanted to get home to feel that sanctuary of home. And it just, there was no law. I was freaking out for no reason. And I didn't quite understand it. And I remember that being the beginning. So we found our way around, found our way back, got to the airport, got checked in, flew home. I created something that didn't exist and I didn't understand it. And I thought, well, that's okay. Just keep moving. I'm a worrywart. Well, no, there was something more going on. And I would encourage any of the listeners or watchers to start to consider that once you start dealing with enough bears, they can become dragons in the pretend world. And that's where the danger is. We need to be concerned about dragons, but they don't come along as converting bears into dragons. That's the fallacy that I had. And perhaps some of you have experienced the same.
I'm sure everyone has. I mean, and it really is about acknowledgement and awareness. And a lot of times we get so like everything's going on us so much that we end up turning things that are normal, everyday occurrences into catastrophic events. And then we begin to over respond. And when we over respond, then we start worrying about how we respond. And now we're stressed out if we're going to be able to handle the situation and be appropriate and all this stuff. So it just keeps on rolling downhill and it picks up speed. You take a semi truck out of gear and start rolling it down a mountain. It's not going to slow down, even though it's 40,000 pounds, it's going to get faster. And this is what this is. This is, instead of using the gears of brake, hey, I'm pushing up in the fifth gear or eighth or ninth gear. I need to go back to second gear to slow myself down. What we do is yank the thing out of gear and take our foot off the gas and brake and just fly down the hill.
Well,
And that ends up being the problem.
let me also add that there's something more to this that, and again, I'm not a medical professional, but the constant turning bears into dragons, which can happen in a challenging society. It is hard, when you go to McDonald's now and it costs you $15 for a burger and fries. I mean, it is very challenging, and there's a lot of things that cause stress. And from everything that I read, everybody's got an opinion, but this constant cortisol getting pumped into your blood over a period of time, the stress can kill you, is the point I'm driving at. And it's sort of like a cliche that people say, yeah, but there is a physiological element that can degrade your body and it can hurt you. And if you don't know what's going on, you just tend to ignore it and say, nah, I'll be fine. Well, I'll just go home, get some rest, and I'll be fine. And the constant pounding that your body takes, constantly being in the fight or flight mode, it is not good. And I think that has had an effect on me, and I've had to try to find the balance again, because it is decades of real trauma and made up trauma has landed me into that panic attack. But I try to take negatives and turn them inside out. And that's what the Walks with Wally is about, is something, I mean, it's not expensive to get. It's on Amazon. There's some, reviews out there. There's just a lot. It's $10. I mean, seriously, take a chance on it and see. This is heretofore has not been a money-making adventure. This is about reaching out, wanting fellowship, wanting to encourage people, wanting people to see some of these things, because if we tend to our spirit, made in the image of God, knowing right from wrong, if we tend to our spirit a little bit more, I think that our overall body, soul, spirit experience can holistically improve and fight these fiery darts of the enemy much better.
Couldn't say it better myself. So let's start landing the plane. Okay. We're about 30 minutes and Wade's just not going to do this. Okay. Another part of dealing with anxiety and depression, because You end up getting depressed because of some of your behavior, because you look in the past, hey, I've treated people inappropriately because I've over responded. Wade, like a lot of other people, has difficulty accepting the, you know, good things, myself included. And that's why I've already asked him a few times to read this review and he won't. And I'm going to. So I'm going to do that because these words put me on my face. This was, you know, I know someone could probably be watching this podcast and say, these two guys got to figure it out. You know, look, they're talking, he's written all these books and, you know, they're podcasting on a deeper end of the pool, but boy, we struggle with trying to keep hope and our spirit alive, because this is not a topic a lot of people want to get involved in, especially men.
Oh,
And this is
gosh,
two
yes.
men talking to you right now. This is not, and I'm not saying anything. We have a whole population of our ladies or female brothers that have been brave enough to stand up to the mic and say, I need help. But then sometimes they get the help from the wrong place and it turns into something it's not supposed to be. I know as a man that I've experienced, I have allowed dragons, bears to be dragons, and then I've acted inappropriately and unbiblically in different events. And then that weighs on me, which turns into depression, which starts shutting me out, not want me to speak, not want me to podcast. And then the end result of that is that God's mission for me, his calling on me, gets slowed or even stopped. I become very disobedient, even though I'm trying to be obedient. So I'm going to be obedient right now. And I'm going to read this because you need to hear these words. And if I can't keep it together during it, so be it, people. You know, this is just, hopefully you can, this meant so much for us and more for Wade. And this was a massive word of encouragement from a population of people that probably wouldn't be very savvy with something being written holistically focusing on the Bible and Christ. So here it goes. A heartfelt story and guide written with compassion and care. This is an important book as there are very few guides on how to navigate anxiety written by a sufferer. The book is unique. The author draws on his faith in nature and nature walks with his dog Wally as a healing process, natural to supernatural. I love how the book is structured in the form of 21-day fast and how each day has a different theme and message. The author has a strong voice and is a skillful storyteller. This is both a spiritual and a practical guide, packed with useful suggestions and comforting words. It's very easy to read, understand, and implement these lessons. I love the Jesus wasn't kidding when he said verses included in every chapter. I love some of the quotes: smothered in gratitude, gobbled up like life like a Pac Man. Gratitude is the antivenom to anxiety. This is a very deep, well-researched, thought-provoking, well-written book.
That is beautiful and very much appreciated. But the message I like to share is help us help you. You can't move toward healing if you don't take a step. And I got forced into it when all of a sudden my whole body clutched up and I didn't know what was going on. Thankfully, my first instinct was to say, save me, Jesus, because I didn't know what was going on. Fortunately, I had some good medical professionals and my wife there. And in the aftermath, I don't want anyone who's hearing this now to ignore what's going on. Take a step. I don't care if you're a big reader. Listen, we've got this book on print. We have it on Kindle, and we have it on audiobook through the Audible program. And if you subscribe to the Audible program, you can listen to it for free. You can listen to it for free, or you can make a purchase. These are nominal amounts, but it will give you something to fight back against the things that are going on. And if any of this has reverberated or resonated with you at all, then take a step. It's currently right before the Christmas season, but this is something, I don't care if it's the middle of March, whenever it is that you see or hear this, it's going to be time to just take a small step to fighting back against. Because let me tell you something, even if you're losing a battle with anxiety, depression, whatever, taking a step back against it, when you're dictated to, you feel totally victimized. When you take any step, flip it back around and basically flip off the enemy, that makes you feel empowered. It makes you feel stronger, and it makes you feel like even just taking a little half baby step. But there's a lot of encouragement here. And again, this isn't about selling books. This is about bringing recognition and bringing about fellowship, because we want to be engaged in these things, because, we're both not spring chickens, Ray and I, and we want to use what we've been through. I mean, Ray has been through, he was in the military. He's been through some stuff that normal human beings wouldn't go through. And he's dealt with the aftermath of all of that. We are standing ready, wanting to help, but you have to take a step, and you can't just be dictated to constantly. So reach out to us, check out, there's, whether it's through Kindle or, the audio, just take a step toward healing instead of constantly being victimized.
Well, thank you, Wade. I tell you what, there's not a time that I don't hit the record button on Farewell, My King, that I don't get my heart filled, my heart broken, and a moment to rejoice, because God works best in a broken heart. And so I like it when he breaks my heart. So, thank you everyone who's taken the time. If you've seen a short, or if you've seen the full, maybe a clip of this somewhere, and you've gotten here to this full episode, because this part right now will not be on it, is that I want y'all to know something, is that you're heard and you're understood, and Jesus knows what's the next step for you, but you have to be obedient. And part of that obedience is stepping into the family. None of this matters if you're not in this family. And if you have some questions about that, this is the place to ask them. And this is, put a comment in the YouTube, note, comment there, farewellmyking@gmail, find Wade on Facebook, and send us a direct message. We will walk with you. And, and there he is. There's Wally. That's the star of the show right
That's the
there.
star of the show.
If you hung around this long, you got to see who really wrote the book. But we appreciate all your support, and there has been massive amount of support here lately on the Kindle, and there's been some book purchases. We just, if you're one of the people who have read some of Wade's books in the past, thank you so much. And if you've listened to this podcast with me and him talking, thank you. This is unreal. When we see one view or one subscribe, it means the world to us. So in bringing this down and landing the plane for Farewell, My King, I want all of you to know, from the bottom of me and Wade's heart, we are praying for you, even if we don't know your name, because we know what you're going through. And when we've been through it also, we can pray for the people who are going through the same stuff. And I believe
Absolutely.
God's good enough to share that prayer with whoever needs it. So check us out on all these on social media, on Facebook. Right now, the screen's going to come up while I'm talking. You're going to see all that in print, so you can take a screenshot of it. And of course, Wade's got the book right there in hard copy. But I'm going to I'm going to clear me and Wade's face out here, because I do feel led that I should lead us out in prayer. And this is not something we do every podcast, but it just seems like the right way today. So Jesus, thank you for this podcast. Thank you for the people who are listening. Thank you for the obedience of Wade to stay strong and do as he's told and as he's led to do. Jesus, I pray for the people who right now are suffering and believe there's no hope. Please come to rescue their heart, open them up, and allow them to get the help that they need from the proper people. Lead them to the right place at the right time, so your will can be done in their life, because your will is for them to be healed. The healing that can happen in this world is what you want from them. Now, there will be a healing when we come to you that we can't even represent that here. But we're asking for the healing that you allow us, heal our minds, heal our souls, and heal our hearts, and make us cling to you in these times of hardship. In Jesus' name we pray. Y'all have a good one. Thank you for joining us on Farewell, My King. And it was a pleasure seeing you, Wade. I'm glad we got to do this again.
Appreciate you guys.